We acted as a safe haven for terrorist groups. The Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir, all the groups that are prescribed and banned by the UAE and Islamic countries, and given a place in Britain. Drug dealing. Some of the best people I've met in my life are Muslim. Some of the people I love are Muslim. That doesn't change the problems that come from the Islamic culture and community. We acted as a safe haven for terrorist groups. The Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir, all the groups that are prescribed and banned by the UAE and Islamic countries, and given a place in Britain. Drug dealing, the heroin dealing, the pimping of young girls, the grooming. They were confined to towns like Luton. They're not now. They're widespread across the country, and people can see them in their own towns. I'd grown up in that environment. So 2004, I organised 200 lads, and I'd done it barefaced. We've got to deal with these lot. They're outside our bakery in our town centre recruiting for terrorists. That was the start of the English Defence League.
And you ended up leaving the EDL, why?
By 2014, I was put in jail, and there was these groups, Northwest Infidels, absolute scumbags, yeah, proper Nazis, proper racist little mugs, and I'd had clashes with them for years. By the time I come out of jail, I watched the demonstrations I've missed, and I see them all there. I realised that what I need the public to see is what I've seen. Rape after rape, extremism after extremism, terrorism after terrorism.
That's when you became a journalist.
And I become the most watched journalist in Europe. I was covering stories that no one else would. I produced Panodrama. It had 2 million views in 24 hours. I was deleted from everything. What I wasn't ready for was the state persecution. They've wanted to set an example, to send a message to everyone else, but it's backfired because I'm a stubborn little shit. And my last prison sentence was for making a film. I've got all the proof that the whole court system is corrupt. The whole judiciary is corrupt.
You showed it in Trafalgar Square and they put you in jail.
I said to the kids, I want to play the film, Dad's going to go to jail. I want their permission to do it. I explained that I feel I have to do it. I've gone through this life for 15 years, everything we've all seen. Remember, my kids have lived in 8 houses. Houses being smashed up, cars being smashed up. My kids were there when people come up saying we'll stick holes in you. My son after that wouldn't walk down the street and he had panic attacks all the time. And he was about 9. So yeah. So then I played the film. My son come on a visit and said, Dad, it's on 140 million views, Dad. We've done it. I was like, yes. And when Elon Musk shared it, this first week of January, I've rung home. Son's like, Dad! And I'm ringing, I'm like, what? He goes, Elon Musk just pinned free Tommy Robinson. He shared the film. And that first week in January, I sort of relaxed because I knew it was worth it.
You have an event coming up September 13th in London.
This is going to be the biggest thing London's seen.
And you said bring your family, bring your kids.
I get shown love everywhere I go now, so change is coming. To people who are upset, to people who feel alienated, alone, you're not alone, man. You're the majority. Change is coming. They can't stop it.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games.
What about?
That accuses local councils, police...
The film!
That accuses local councils, police forces, and media outlets of ignoring or enabling the systematic exploitation of vulnerable children. The project has reignited national debate around free speech, press freedom, and the accountability of public institutions. Your activism has led to arrests, legal challenges, and bans from major platforms, something we've also experienced here at London Real. While some see you as a whistleblower confronting uncomfortable truths, accuse you of fueling division and spreading extremist rhetoric. You said in the past that Islam itself is the root cause of much of this extremism, but when I spend time in places like the UAE and cities like Dubai, I see something very different. An Islamic-based culture and government that promotes safety, traditional values, and an anti-woke ethos without the problems you highlight in Britain. Today, I want to discover who is Tommy Robinson and ask what your story exposes about the growing crisis in Britain, Europe, and now the United States, the spread of extremism, the collapse of institutional trust, and the systematic erosion of free speech in so-called democratic societies. Tommy, welcome to London Real.
It's good to be here. We're going to have a lot to talk about.
I feel like this was always going to happen, and I'm really glad it's happening. So thank you. I think we should start from the beginning. I want to hear about what it was like to grow up in Luton in the 1980s and 1990s and 2000s, because I think that without understanding that, no one understands who you are or your political views or even your activism today.
And I also think that where the public have shifted, the problems that I spoke about growing up as a child, and when I started talking about the problems in Luton, they were confined to towns like Luton.
Right.
They're not now. They're widespread across the country,
right,
and people can see them in their own towns. So then they're realising, damn, many of the things we spoke about, which we were called lies for, or fear-mongering, or exaggerations, like the rape gang scandal, we were talking about that for 20 years, and no one wanted to believe us. Now they realise we were telling the truth. But just so that any of your viewers understand, I was born in 1982. Luton, we don't pronounce our T's in Luton, but Luton is 30 miles north of London. Okay, it's a working class town. It's labelled as probably one of the roughest towns in Britain. It's a lot of poverty. But when I was born in 1982, we had one mosque. We now have 45. Yeah. So, and Luton, sound posh saying that, Luton is a blueprint for every town and city. Okay, the demographical change to Luton, the problems that come in Luton, they're going to go on in every town and city. And that's what we've been trying to warn about. It's Luton today is your town tomorrow. You can ignore it if you want, but it's coming. You can move out of Luton if you want, just come in there in 10 years. Yeah? The demographical change in this nation, which has been accelerated through mass immigration, open border immigration, weak cowards as government, no one willing to address this issue. Even now, Nigel Farage won't address it. He doesn't care about the demographical change to the country. So he doesn't care if white English become a minority. Well, white English are a minority in Luton. And as I said, it's a blueprint. But so you understand growing up, and I want to make something clear. You spoke about the United Arab Emirates. Just so people understand, some of the best people I've met in my life are Muslim. Some of the people I love are Muslim. Yeah? Luton, growing up at school, some of those wonderful and best people I've ever met, yeah, are Muslim. That doesn't change some of the problems that come from the Islamic culture and community. Doesn't change it. So some people try and argue, well, yeah, but my kebab shop worker or the tax driver I had was a lovely bloke. That doesn't prove Islam's going to be good, okay? So the changes you see, when I grew up, when I went to my junior school, it was different. But when I went to high school, in our area of Luton, we had buses full of Pakistani Muslims being brought up to the high school. Yeah. Now, Luton, my mum was an Irish immigrant to Luton. When my mum come, it was no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. That was what was on the. That was the shops. Yeah. And the Irish community were in one area of the town, and then there was the Muslim community, but the Muslim community compared to all the other communities, there was no integration or assimilation. And I only realised this when I went to high school. Because when I went to high school, we had St. Lucians, Jamaicans, Bulgarians, Italians, Indians, so Sikhs, Chinese. We had everyone, every son of every immigration. But straight away at school, the Muslims were just all together. For example, you had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground. Luton's division was never through race, because white and black was like this. Yeah, Luton has as a youngster, I was elevated towards the football hooligan scene in Luton. As a young working class kid, I went to football and lads would meet up on a Saturday and have a boisterous day out of the football. But Luton's football hooligan element was very diverse. It's all whites and blacks, always has been. So the older generation from me that I aspired and looked up to as a kid, it was white and black men standing together fighting on the terraces. Yeah, that's why. So Luton's never had. And I never experienced any racism. I never saw racism. It was, if there was ever trouble, the whites and blacks would be together and they'd be fighting the Pakistanis. And that happened at school, time and time again. Yeah. And I explain it to people that if you just walk into the school dinner hall, go into any school in Luton, yeah, I guarantee you, when you walk in, you'll have everyone sitting together, and in the corner there'll be 10 tables of Pakistani Muslims. They won't even sit with you. We didn't create that as children. That wasn't us. And I never really understood it, if I'm honest, growing up. I didn't get it. I just knew the Pakistanis were different. There was something very different about the Pakistanis. If you have a fight with one, you might as well declared war with the whole community. Yeah. If you have a fight with a 13-year-old Pakistani boy at school, when you get outside, there's 20 men waiting. And any lads listening to this around the country who grew up where Muslim communities are know the score. Yeah. They just stick together. They come from everywhere.
Makes them stronger.
Yeah, and it's a strong culture. It's a strong ideology. It's a strong brotherhood. In fact, it's filling the void of something that we've lost, which is why many people are converting to Islam. We can get onto that. There's some benefits of Islam. There's some things you should respect about Islam, about the way as a community it brings itself together. But there's a lot of problems that come from it that we must talk about. So,
is there any parallel with like Italian immigrants in America and the mafia, that they would move together to have some strength for an immigrant group? And they would do the same here?
Maybe when the Muslim community first come to the UK, this is what I understand, yeah? In Luton and towns like Luton, maybe they were targeted, maybe there was racism, maybe they were victims, and maybe they clubbed together and stuck together. Maybe, yeah? But when you understand, 2010-11, I was on solitary confinement. I spent 22 weeks on solitary confinement. And a Muslim outreach group sent me a Quran to try and convert me to Islam when I was in prison. And I opened up the Quran. I thought, right, I've never looked at the book. Let's try and understand this book. And I'll challenge anyone watching this to do it. Take the Quran and make a reference every time it says, do not be friends with Christians or Jews. Just reference the verse and the chapter. And I started going through and I'm making notes, and I had pages. And everything I'd seen my whole life just fell into place. I just looked and thought, oh my God. So all of these children are being brought up in their households from this big, reading this book, which tells them not to be friends with Christians or Jews, which teaches supremacy over Christians and Jews, which teaches total non-assimilation and integration. It's from this book. That's when I realised this is the problem. This is what's created, even if it wasn't violent, this is what's created the total Islamic ghettos. And I challenge journalists, again, I'll challenge anyone to do this. Yeah? Whenever a journalist used to come to Luton and interview me, when I set up the English Defence League, I'll get on to explaining why we've done that, but I would say to a journalist, okay, you go and find Muslims with non-Muslims. Go on, we're in the town centre, go find me any Muslim with a non-Muslim. You're not gonna. You might find them working together, but as soon as work finishes, just like when school finishes, yeah, it's the Muslims and it's the non-Muslims. You'll find whites with blacks. Every group of white boys will be with blacks. Every group of black boys will be with whites. Well integrated, well assimilated. Yeah, you won't find it. You just won't find it unless they're selling them heroin or selling them drugs or raping them. You will not find it, and that's just. And again, that's the truth.
It's also given them the power.
It gives them
that maybe other groups are jealous of.
I'd say at times we've been jealous as a community looking at the Islamic community, at the togetherness, the brotherhood, the staunch identity, and it's filled a void of what the weakness in what the West has become. Right. When our families have come under attack, which is all orchestrated and organised, yeah, weaken the family, attack the men, feminise the men. We're witnessing all this. It's happening to the Western Christian nations. Yeah. And as that's happening to us, you have Islam, which says, we're not weakening. We're not flying rainbow flags. You have to hold your hands up. I remember when I watched the World Cup in Qatar, I was like, it's their country, governed by their laws, yeah? And I was actually thinking, I was about time someone told them to take those rainbow flags down. Yeah? Stop pushing that shit. But at the same time, there's lots of flaws with it. But I think it's filled a void.
So you respect it to a certain extent, but it's also terrorizing your country.
It's terrorizing our country, it's changing our country, it's dominating our country. And I respect it in a certain sense, and I can give so many examples, Brian, of, say for example, we set up the English Defence League, yeah? I'll rewind and explain why, because there's lots of justification why. But I set up the English Defence League. We're a street protest movement. We come out of Luton, spread across the whole country.
When did it start, roughly?
It started 2009.
2009.
Now, so my first, just so you understand my upbringing, I went to school. I was from a working class background. I done well at school. I didn't try. I got 11 grades, I got 11 A to C's, I got an A in maths. I didn't look at one book, yeah? I could sit in class and mess around the whole class and breeze it, okay? I was quite natural, it was easy for me. Yeah. I didn't study a bit, I passed all the GCSEs. When I left school, I applied to be an aeronautical engineer.
At Luton, right?
At Luton, and I qualified, I went to work and I qualified, and I knew very quickly I shouldn't be there, if I'm honest, yeah? When I started talking to the other people that worked there, who I didn't have much in common with. I asked them where they lived, and they all lived in villages, and they're all from wealthy areas, all the people who worked as aircraft engineers. And I just felt out of place. And I think I felt out of place because of my background and where I'd come from. And I'd go out and I'd come in with a black eye after a night out, and everyone would look at me like an alien. I think, what's going on? Like, and the way you brought up in Luton, what you think's normal in Luton, I only realise isn't normal as I grew up.
Like what?
Like fighting and violence and way to deal with things. Our school would fight the other schools every Friday. Lads would be going out 30-handed looking for other lads. And that was just part of growing up. And if someone says something to you negative, you'd beat them up. But that's not normal. But it took me a long time to realise that's not normal. It took me till I started looking at other towns. And when I experienced going to other communities or other areas near Luton, I went to Hitchin. I thought, wow, this place is lovely. There's no attitude. When you walk through Luton, people are looking at you. There's aggression. And that's not. I'm not talking about the Muslim community here. I'm just talking. There's an aggression. Right. So I grew up in that town of Luton, but I always my mum was Irish. She was one of 8 children. They come from a real poor background, but I had a loving family, a really loving family. I had a great upbringing. And I guess I was always in the group of lads that were causing lots of trouble, but I never got involved in the criminality. And I managed to keep myself I'd done my career, I'd done my job, I qualified as an aircraft engineer. I went on after that, I set up two businesses between me and my ex-wife. We purchased 7 properties. We were doing well. But 2004, when I was doing my apprenticeship, the Beslam school massacre happened. I don't know if you remember it.
Oh yeah, in Chechnya.
In Chechnya.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
brutal.
Everyone has a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Something changes your mind and wakes you up. And do you know what? Sometimes would it have been better not to wake up? You know, all these people who have opened their eyes, when maybe it was during COVID, vaccines. Once your eyes are open, you can't close them. You know it changes you. It takes over your life. I guess you've experienced it, yeah?
A little bit.
And then it takes over everything. So the English Defence League took over my life.
What did you see from that Beslan massacre?
So I saw the Beslan massacre, and I saw...
This is when a bunch of terrorists took over a school.
Terrorists took over a school.
And the Russians went in and they blew it up or something.
Yeah, they took over the school, but the parents come outside the school. So imagine this. Your children are inside the school. Lots of terrorists have got the children. The parents are outside school gates. The military are not letting them go in because they've got the situation they're trying to deal with. And then you hear them start butchering the kids and killing the kids. And I can see the parents now, I can see it now, dropping on their knees. And I remember watching it just going, what the fuck is this? Like, this isn't one madman. This is an entire group. That's what woke me up to it. It wasn't one absolute lunatic going on a killing spree. This was a whole group of men that have come together. They've prepared this and they've decided to go attack children and butcher them. And so for me, it was looking at it going, well, what's behind this? Yeah. And then 2 weeks after, so this was my wake-up call. I was doing my apprenticeship. And a couple of weeks after this, there's an interview in a chicken shop in Luton. Yeah? And in this chicken shop in Luton, there's Pakistani Muslims being interviewed. And one of their names is Saif al-Islam, Sword of Islam. That's what it translates as. And at the time, he was number 2 in an organisation called Al-Mujahideen. Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza with a hook, all the country's worst terrorists, this was the group. Now at the time, this group weren't prescribed as a terrorist organisation. There was no one prescribed as a terrorist organisation because we hadn't had a terrorist attack in the UK. Right. In fact, what the UK acted as, so people understand the history of it, we acted as a safe haven for terrorist groups. We gave safe haven because we wanted a Mujahideen, Islamic jihadists, to be fighting against Russia in Afghanistan. So we let them base themselves. The Muslim Brotherhood, Hizb ut-Tahrir, all the groups that are prescribed and banned by the UAE and Islamic countries are allowed to grow and were supported and given a place in Britain. Yeah. So as these groups are growing, when none of us even know what they are or who they are, we don't know what Islam is or jihad is at the time. Yeah. So I look at this interview in a chicken shop, and I'm young, and I'm pretty full of testosterone anyway. As a young man, I didn't mind a punch up as a youngster. I'd grown up in that environment, and I saw these Muslims being interviewed, Pakistani boys, and they're talking about Chechnya, the attack, and he said if this happened in a school in the UK, it'd be justified. And I'm looking, thinking, who the fuck is he? I'd already started looking at that group, the group that done it. So enough, and then I zoomed in on him and thought, Saif al-Islam, let me see who he is. It's funny because I end up having a clash with him years later on the documentary. He punched me through the car window. It was a viral video, but I can get onto that. So I look at him And I go, right, who's he? So I look at their head office, and it's on Biscuit Road in Luton, and I start looking at the group. And
how do you get out of a rat race? How do you create wealth not only for yourself, but also for the generations to come after?
I am absolutely amazed with the quality of companies that we're getting exposure to.
We go on to Zoom calls with the innovators and the folks who are building new applications in metaverse, blockchain, artificial intelligence, decentralized finance.
What's going on, everybody? Thumbs up if you can see me.
We are focusing on early stage investment.
And the quality of people that we're getting exposure to, whether it be Dan Tapiero with 1RT, Jason Ma from Open, Yatsu from Animoca.
It's been a phenomenal experience thus far. It has far exceeded my expectations.
We are focusing on cutting edge technologies.
I view it now as the best investment I've ever made. The upside I view is unlimited.
And as a retail investor, I would never get this exposure anywhere else outside of Investment Club.
See you in the Investment Club.
I see that every Saturday they're outside Don Miller's Bakery in Luton Town Centre. So the next Saturday I went down to watch, and there's a whole massive group of them, and they're openly at this time. This is before they were stopped. Do you remember Abu Hamza with a hook in Finsbury Park Mosque? People might remember this. He used to stand and preach to hundreds of balaclava wearing Muslims, and they'd be promoting jihad and planning jihad, and no one's stopping them. Free speech it was, yeah? Free speech. If you talk against it, you get nicked, but it was free speech. So that's all going on. And then I looked, so as I'm standing there watching, they were recruiting people to go fight against British Armed Forces, yeah? Wow. Sending them out and helping them, and had all these pace tables set up. And there was a copper there. And I said to her, what the fuck is this? And how are these doing this? She said, it's free speech. I said, all right, see if it's free speech in 2 weeks then. She said, what? I said, we'll see if this is free speech in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, I organised about 200 lads, this is our football lads, and got the lads together and said, we've got to deal with these lot. Yeah, as in, they're outside our bakery in our town centre recruiting for terrorists. What's going on? Like, and I guess I've always been a bit tribal anyway. Tribal about school, tribal about Luton, tribal about my country. And I just felt, Luton's our town. And then every time anyone hears Luton mentioned in the media, it's about jihad, terrorism, and it's always beaten down. But inside Luton is a population of working class men and women who love the town, who love the country, who love our armed forces. So this is 2004. So I called it Ban the Luton Taliban. And I made leaflets. And I thought, do you know what? Everything I've seen growing up in this town, my cousin was a victim of what we now call grooming gangs. She was 14, she was raped, gang raped. She woke up naked, getting raped by loads of men with beards, and she'd run through the streets, and the prostitutes on the streets stopped her. They rang her dad. The family ring the police, nothing, yeah? In the end, she'd be climbing back out the window to get back to the Muslim gangs for the heroin fixes, and the police would just say she's a drug addict. The reality, she was a child who they'd enticed, groomed, and then raped, yeah? And nothing was done. And do you know how many girls I went to school with and watched these things happen to? Yeah? So we're watching all this growing up. We're seeing all the hostility. You had the 7-7 launch pad there in Luton, fertiliser bomb pot Luton. Q was the main Al-Qaeda bomb maker, drove a taxi in Luton. All Luton, Luton, Luton. Stockholm bomber, Luton. CIA named Luton as the epicentre for terrorist activity. Why? Because this group, that's what it was, this group. 60% of Muslims in prison now for terrorism are ex-members of this group. This group was out of control, and no one even knew about them. So 2004, I organised 200 lads, and I done it barefaced. I went down and said, fuck them. And in the leaflet, and this leaflet made on the front page of my newspaper. So when I done a presentation in 2015 at Oxford University, I wanted people to understand the history. The English Defence League was born in 2009. It didn't come from nowhere. Yeah? There's been a lot going on in this town. Right. And a lot has been allowed to happen. So I had the opportunity in 2015 to explain it to an audience at Oxford University and say, let me tell you who I am, and let me tell you where I come from, and see if you still have the same opinion. Because you've got an opinion on me based on media, but you don't know you haven't seen what I've walked. You haven't lived my life. Yeah? So I'll talk about certain things, like there was a gentleman called Mark Sharp in Luton. His son was my age. He drove past and he had a road rage with some Muslim lads. He called them wankers, and then they followed him. And as they're following him, they rang for reinforcements, and they get him as he pulls up with his son to get a takeaway. They get out and they're beating him with baseball bats, and he doesn't go down. He was a tough bloke. He doesn't go down, and they jump up and snap a knife off in his head, and they kill him. He survived for about a week in hospital, but then he died. And I remember this. This is just one incident. I remember loads of incidents like this. When they went to court, read this case, it will shock you. Yeah. When they went to court, the judge said to the jury, you can decide if what Mark done by calling them wankers was enough to provoke a young Asian male. They got 2 years and 4 years. They butchered him, killed him in front of his son. His family left Luton at the time. They all moved out. Yeah? So I'd watch incident after incident, rape after rape, extremism after extremism, terrorism after terrorism. 2004, in the leaflet, which I dug up for Oxford University. And the reason I dug it up was for, say where we are now. I want people to know I've never changed. What I said in 2004 is what I'm saying now. Now in the leaflet in 2004, I said whites and blacks, because it's not a white issue in Luton. Remember, I'm not from a white town. Yeah, the people I love are not all white. So when people try to wear around white supremacists, like, what are you talking about? Yeah, but I said whites and blacks are being religiously and racially targeted. The police are doing nothing about it. And the reason being, you see what's now become a phrase in British politics, two-tier policing? I watched it my whole life. If you're outside a nightclub and the whites and blacks are having rows with the Pakistani Muslims, the police turn up and smash the whites and blacks.
Why is that?
Because they're scared of them. They're scared of the power they have.
Or is it also the wokeness,
it's
the mind virus that came the last 20, 30 years?
Well, I'd say after Stephen Lawrence, there was institutional racism, it went 360. It's gone so far the other way.
And that was the fear of being called racist, the fear of the perception of racism, and that flips it the other way.
Your whole career's gone. Your job's gone. And what would happen if the Muslims, say something went wrong with a couple of Muslims, there'd be 200 at the police station. You saw what happened in the Manchester attack. I think the verdict's come, Manchester airport.
Yeah.
So when the police officer kicked him in the head.
Yeah.
There were demonstrations everywhere. We find out that they were beating innocent people up in the airport, breaking police officers' noses. But the Muslim community will take to the streets. In Luton, the Muslim community will riot. They will threaten violence. After the Bradford riots in 2001, where Muslims rioted in Bradford, Oldham, across the north, costing tens of millions of pounds to the economy. After that, they got concessions in everything. And what their leaders always say is, we won't be able to control the youth. And their leaders act as negotiators. So they sit down and negotiate with the government and police forces, and then the police pander and basically let them get away with everything. And that's what we'd seen growing up in Luton. And the other thing is that politically, so Luton at the time, I remember when I looked into this, we had 19 mosques, and the leader of the council of the mosques sits down with the Labour council, and they do a deal. Right. This is how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want 40,000 votes? This is what you need to do. Yeah. And they'll get land for a mosque for 50p. They'll get this concession, that concession, and then they get voted in by Labour. And then we, as working class, we become irrelevant. White working class, we're gone. Yeah, because we don't vote in a military fashion.
Right.
We don't organise ourselves. We don't have the community spirit, the community togetherness of 19 mosques telling them who to vote for and organising. So for Labour to stay in power in Luton, we don't matter. They do. So the funding, everything goes that way. Yeah. And when we started, so when I started the English Defence League, so this was 2004. Yeah. This is 5 years before the EDL. I organised the protest, and I make these leaflets, and I named the Pakistani gang that's doing the drug dealing, the heroin dealing, the pimping of young girls, the grooming. They were called the Gambino Gang. Not very original for Pakistanis, right? Copying the name, but that's what they were called. And 3 years later, the national newspapers run a story on the same gang, saying that gang are funding terrorism, and there's a link between the street level gangs and the terrorism, and they fund each other. But when I made this, so when I come out against them, I was obviously target number one. I was young, we were the football group, and then we had all the Pakistani gangs wanting blood, because I'd named them, brought 200 lads out. For that first day, the terrorists weren't there. They bottled it. They always do bottle it, if I'm honest. When it's been on, they bottle it. Yeah. When the English Defence League started, they bottled it. They weren't there. Yeah.
That's guerrilla tactics, right?
That's what they do. Then they come out in numbers. Then they come out in numbers and they get you.
So in 2004, you had printed all this up, including the gang, including the heroin and the grooming and all that. You had called it all out.
I called it all out. And if you watch on my Oxford Union presentation, I read the leaflet out and I show the front page of the paper. When I'd done my presentation, I went to the library and went back through the papers to get the leaflet to just show everyone, this is what I was saying then. Yeah. And it was ignored, and I'd seen it. And this is where we are now. And this was so by the time 2009 comes, by that time I've had clashes with with all the drug gangs, because they've all wanted to get me. They've smashed my mum's house up. I can't go out in Luton unless I go out at 30 lads. But that just become normal, yeah. And then by the end of a few years of battling, when they see you, so all right, you know, you grow up from being 20 and you're all fighting each other. As you get older, so then by this time I'm 24, 25, and there's a soldiers' homecoming parade in Luton. And as the soldiers are marching through, I went down on a Tuesday morning and I stood there. And as I got down to the town centre, it was a homecoming parade for the Royal Anglian Regiment. And as I come down, I saw police everywhere. And I thought, what's going on? Like, yeah, we got a soldiers' homecoming, but there was quite a high presence of police. And then I saw about 30 women wearing niqabs, yeah? And then I started spotting the jihadists, Saif al-Islam. Remember, so lots of these are now dead. 3 of them died fighting for ISIS. Saif al-Islam's done jail for ISIS. Roger Ibrahim, I used to hang around with him as a kid. He was a convert in jail. He's now done jail for ISIS. So this group, they've all been dismantled now, but at the time they weren't. And I saw the police take them. And then I saw my town hall, the doors opened, and they walked them all through. And I was watching them walking through, thinking, what's going on? And then as the soldiers and their families have come marching down here at the back of the town hall, they took the Muslims right to the front. And then they spat at them. They spat at the soldier's mum's face. Now in this regiment, Scott Muntridge was from our estate, 26, he died. Michael Swain, 19, lost his legs. So you can imagine the feeling of a community that are there to pay respects and then watch this. So when we saw this, people got angry, the police turned their batons on us. And I remember watching it that day and watching it all develop and being so angry because it's Luton and it went world news and all they were shouting butchers of Basra, all the Muslims were. And then we found out, because there's probably about 60 or 80 of them. But then we found out, because they nicked my cousin, they nicked a couple of our lads that day. And then when they nicked them, we got the intel reports that the police detained 330 Muslims coming off the motorway. So they knew they were coming from everywhere to attack the troops. So they stopped the ones that were coming from outside of Luton, but the Luton ones they couldn't stop. So this happened, and then we found out that all the mosques were leafleted the week before, and that the police knew it was going to happen, the council knew it was happening. And this is the problem. The council knew and the police knew what they were going to do, but they're so scared of them, they couldn't tell them no. Now, if we said we want to protest outside a mosque or on an Islamic event, they wouldn't let us. Yeah? They wouldn't let you. So when we watched it, I thought, right, if they get away with this, if they're allowed to do this, what's next? Soldier's funeral? What's next? They're going to be going to graveyards? What are they going to do next? There has to be a reaction to this. The country has to know there's a reaction to this. The police need to know there's a reaction to this. So I set up a group called the United People of Luton, the UPL. And the first event was the community, my aunties, family, women. And we tried to get to the war memorial that they got to. And when we turned up on the day, hundreds of us, we had banners, we made it very clear, National Front, the Nazis go to hell, Saif al-Islam go to hell, Islamic extremists go to hell, we want our town back. In fact, on that first march, the second march, you can find it on YouTube, it was the first singing of, you hear now at demonstrations, we want our country back. Well, that's what we're all singing, we want our country back. It's going back to 2009, yeah? There was hundreds of us. But when we turned up, the police, I paid a cameraman, a wedding photographer, contacted a wedding, and I've done this because I know what happens, because I've seen it my whole life. But I wanted everyone else to know. I wanted the public to see the difference between how we're treated and how they're treated. So I paid this cameraman £450, and he's a wedding cameraman. He must think, well, see, and then when he turns up, there's like hundreds of us, and so you just need to video with us, follow us, and video everything. So we walk down, the police come from everywhere, and then they stop us, take your shoes off, searching our socks, putting their hands in our pockets, cameras in our faces, what's your name, where do you live? So I just said, you didn't do this to them. On that Tuesday, when they went through our town hall, you didn't stop and search them, I watched her. There was no searching of them, there was no cameras in their faces, and then they kettled us. So when we tried to get to the town hall, they kettled and they didn't let people past. The police come past on a horse, they knocked a little black lad, they knocked his teeth out, Isaac, my mate, they knocked his teeth out, and they kettled us for 3 or 4 hours. Women were having to urinate in the street. And we were ready to blow. I was like, no, you let them get to the war memorial. Now we've turned up as a community to get to the war memorial. We're getting attacked by you, kettled by you, and treated like second-class citizens again by a police force which didn't do anything to the terrorists. So this was more, I said at that moment, this was the first bank holiday in May. And 3 weeks later, so we have this demonstration, and then 2-3 days later, boom, 14 dawn raids. One of them was my mum's. So the police come through all the doors, and this is them trying to crush any resistance straight away. So what they did is they took anyone who was influential, young lads, because we were young at the time, but so if you had a bit of a following or you were from an estate, because lots of different estates come together, they dawn raided them. And this is to scare everyone else. And when they went to my mum's, I weren't there. And they gave everyone they arrested bail conditions not to enter Luton Town Centre for 3 months, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So they banned us. Now, in the build-up to this first ever demonstration, I set up a petition. And it was a petition with 3,500 signatures. Before any protests, we set up a petition and we asked the council to use ASBO orders, antisocial behaviour orders. So in our estate, if 2 kids are continually causing trouble together, they get given an ASBO where they're not allowed to hang around together. So what we asked the council was, give this group an ASBO. Get them out of our town centre. So after what they've done to our soldiers, if my mum wants to walk past Don Miller's, these lot ain't there. And if vulnerable young men are walking past Don Miller's, these lot ain't converting them, yeah? Instead of doing that to them, the police come and done it to us. So next comes a second demonstration, and this is what gave birth to the English Defence League. Because the next demonstration, I rang the police anonymously, because the feeling was that strong. And you can watch the video, Unite People of Luton protest. I'd say 500 lads turned up. And I bought balaclavas for everyone. So when we met at the pub, I gave everyone balaclavas, and we all had no surrender. We had Luton Town t-shirts, and it said no surrender to Al Qaeda. Yeah, and I'd gone to all the different estates and met lads from other estates who we didn't even like. Yeah, I said, lads, like, they're taking the piss. Unless we come together as a town, we need to stand up to this. Yeah, we need to stand up to the police, to the council, to all of them. They need to know that this can't carry on. So we all turned up that day, gave out the balaclavas. I rang the police beforehand, anonymously, and said, if you stop us, I'm just warning you, if you try and stop these lads, get into I'm giving you the feeling of the town. Luton's going to burn. I'm telling you, the whole town's going to burn. It's ready to blow. You could have lit a match and the town's about to explode. There was that much anger at what had happened, but then how we'd been treated as a community trying to have our say. Yeah, That's what it become about. It become not so much about what the Muslims had done. It become about the police response, the council response. And then we were sitting watching, Hazel Simmons was the leader of our council. And after the first protest and the second protest, she's saying, these outsiders come into Luton. I think these outsiders, we're all Luton. There's 500 men chanting, we are Luton Town. Now, the imagery didn't look good, okay? Men in balaclavas charged through the streets. The police tried to stop it and couldn't stop it. They got run everywhere. And then everyone got to the war memorial, which is all people wanted. And then we held a minute's silence for our armed forces. But then the image was of hundreds of men wearing balaclavas standing outside our town hall with their hands up. That image went worldwide, yeah? That was the start of the English Defence League. Okay. That's what really gave birth to it. And again, what I'd done after that was that group, Al Mujahideen, the terrorists, who weren't prescribed at the time, we just followed them. So I looked at what they were doing, Islamic Roadshow. They were in Birmingham, they were in Wood Green. We got about 40, 50 of us in the back of a van, and then we jumped out on them in Wood Green to put up their pace tables. And it was sort of like, I guess, instead of going looking for other football teams on a Saturday, we're thinking, get the terrorists. That's how it started.
Okay. And it was a successful start. Did you get what you wanted?
We got what we wanted. They started, well...
And recognition and media coverage.
Media coverage, and it went from me realising that the problems I'd seen in Luton, they're in every town and city.
Okay.
As we took it national, I had families coming to me about their daughters. I was hearing different stories thinking, Jesus, it's the same. Everywhere across the country, we're being betrayed. Our daughters are under attack. So this is going on, and then we're having... And it actually worked, because at the start, Luton's hotting up. There was fire bombings. There was trouble in Luton at the start. All the terrorists got done. So the ones that protest against the soldiers, that some of them lived up in our estate. Like they didn't live up there for long. It went mad.
Okay.
It went mad. And then they were jumping out of cars on people. And then in the end, the imams called us for meetings. And we had meetings with the imams. And they said, we've all got to live in Luton. I said, we know. But you can't... what's happening to our daughters? This was the sticking point. I said, what you are doing to the girls?
What did they say?
They said... Kadir Bask was the main imam. They're all radicals. Proper radicals. But they were worried at the same time. When we went... I said, lads, you're not jumping out of cars on us. We're not going away. Yeah, that people are now ready. And I remember the Pakistani boys ringing me up at the time when it was all kicking off at the start. And they said, "Oh, actually, this lad I grew up with." And they said, "Mate, you're not messing with the street levels here. You're messing with jihadists, man. These boys have been in training camps." I said, "Well, there's 500 of us. There's 500 of us, lads." But at the start, we were that annoyed and frustrated. But whereas in 2004, I used my first name, by the next time when the demonstrations come, that's why I used a fake name, Tommy Robinson. I wore a mask. No one knew who I was at first. They knew we were all there as football lads, but no one knew who the leader was.
Is there power in that? There is at the time.
There was at the time, because I could do it anonymously and not face the backlash. It took about a year before everyone knew who I was. And then I faced the threats, the terrorism, the violence. But for that first year, I could hide who I was.
And you ended up leaving the EDL. Why?
Because the EDL, at that moment in time, you have to understand, you see the grooming scandal, the rape scandal, no one knew about it. What happened in 6 months was I went from working on a building site and running a couple of little companies to being the leader of the biggest street protest movement Europe has seen. And that street protest movement was spiralling out of control at first. No one was ready for it. The police didn't know how to deal with it. We didn't know how to deal with it. We went from Luton, there was 50 of us in Luton. The Islamic Roadshow, this group, set up a pace table in Birmingham, and they had a banner that said Jesus was a Muslim. And they held a banner up and they converted an 11-year-old boy called Sean. I showed this video on my Oxford University so people understand what we've done. And they converted this boy called Sean to Islam, and they're all chanting Allah Akbar. Now, you can't leave Islam, not as far as these jihadists' mindset is. They want to kill you. So I thought, you're now converting our kids. You've gone from attacking our soldiers to shopping centres in Birmingham to converting English kids. I said, no. So we went to Birmingham to try and highlight that. Now, when we went to Birmingham as a group of 50, and we got there, well, Salma Yaqub was a Muslim politician, and they'd all told everyone the National Front, the BNP were coming, and Muslims come from everywhere, and we got attacked, we got battered, people were hospitalised, the police couldn't get us out of there. They locked us in a pub for about 3 hours, then the police brought buses in to put us in, and as they put us in the buses, all the windows come in, and every road we went down was littered with bricks. There were riots. The Muslim community come out to end us on that first event, yeah? But by this point, we had jumpers and hoodies made saying English Defence League. But there was only 50 Luton lads. That's all it was, yeah? And a few Birmingham lads had turned up. Now, from that first demonstration, the images in the national newspaper were English men on the floor and groups of Pakistanis jumping on them. So we'd watch what happened in Birmingham, and after this, there was a church in Longsight in Manchester, and a mosque, so Muslims had bought the church, and then they were just bulldozing over the Christian headstones. So then we watched that and thought, well, look, you can't do that. Right? So then we said, right, we'll leave Birmingham, let's go to Manchester. And when we turned up in Manchester, from that first event where we were violently attacked, 2,000 young men turned up. So we went from 50, but I took all the videos and was putting them on all the football messaging boards, saying Luton have stood up, and showing the video of Luton, showing 500 Luton lads, saying Luton are standing up against terrorists, Luton are standing up against takeover. Luton. So, and then by the time we got to Manchester, 2,000 young men were there. And then I was like, wow, men have taken to this. And then men had come together. And the problem is, after the first incident in Birmingham with the violence against us, it weren't going to be 2,000 nurses that come out on the street. It was 2,000 young men
who wanted some violence,
who ain't going to back down.
Right.
We're not going to back down to it. So that then was the English Defence League, across the whole country. And it was set up, and it was so quick for me, I didn't...
What the London Real Investment Club actually does for you, it gives you the keys to open that door to the inside deals. In the last 3 weeks, I've participated in 3 incredible deals: a layer 2 Bitcoin protocol, an incredible AI protocol. The deal flow is beyond what I expected. I don't think I've ever seen a model like this that just gives average folks the opportunity to be behind the deals, and that's exactly what we've done. Not only that, you get to hang out with Brian Rose every week, and for me, that was huge because I look at Brian as somebody who's not only an expert in the space, and I think is on the leading edge, but just the leading edge of thought with London Real and the work he's doing there. To anyone who's taking a serious look at this, I know it's a big decision.
And there was Mohammed was there, the Muslim representative. I said, you live in Berry Park, don't you? The Muslim community. He said, yeah. I said, so he represents his community and you lot think you represent us. And then I took them up to Farley Hill. I took a representative up to Farley Hill. Farley Hill was one of the most deprived white council estates in Britain. And the park was built in the 1960s. I said, see that park? That's the park for our families and our kids. Let's take a drive down the road to the Muslim community. That's a £330,000 state-of-the-art park. You've neglected us and you've forgot us. Yeah? You've left us behind. And this sort of, my view there, it's not just my view. That's happened to the working class, the white English working class across this country. The biggest academic underachievers in education, white working class. we're failing, and we've been left behind. I think it's like 8% of white working class kids on free school meals go to university, something like this, and 40% of black kids. So they're all going to uni, they're accelerating, everyone else is, because everything's set up for the minority. Yeah? We've just been abused. That's and that's how we feel.
And that is wokeism?
I'd say it's wokeism, but it's also just councils pandering to power. They know where the power lies. Within a town, within the Islamic community, the future is Islam. The future vote bank is the Muslim community. Who do you appease for the vote? You appease them. We don't care about them anymore.
So it's the votes.
It's power.
And the money and the commerce, or the votes?
A mixture of all of it, because when you look at the grooming gangs, the scandal across every town and city, it was covered up, it was hid successfully by government, even by the royals. They knew, they all knew. Yeah, the leaders of our country knew, the police force leaders knew. In every town and city, they knew, and they actually conspired to keep it hidden.
Because it's not a convenient truth for them.
It's not convenient truth because what it does is it highlights their own policy flaws. They've imported these men. They've brought them in. This is the reality of multiculturalism which they've forced on us. This is the reality of open border mass immigration from Pakistan and countries like that. You've brought it in. It's your problem, but they know the future lays with that community, so they don't want to upset that community. They're also, since 2001 with the Bradford riots, they're terrified of anyone saying anything negative that might provoke the Muslims into a violent riot. That's what's happened. So then they all pander, just shit themselves basically, and say, let the little English girls get raped. We'll let that happen. We'll accept that so long as we keep getting voted for, we don't upset anyone. And the police force, as long as no one calls us racist. So when you think, what is the power of political correctness? When you actually say this out loud, people think, is it powerful? How powerful is it? It paralysed from one end of the country to the other of the most successful nation in the world, the most progressive, democratic, free-loving people, and they all stood there and watched children get raped in case they were called racist. That's the power of it. That infection of political correctness has totally paralysed, through fear, an entire nation of people. Well, it had until the English Defence League. Now, no one gives us credit. And people can question our tactics when we're on the street in that manner. And I learned a lot.
Because it was violent and it had a bunch of other bad actors.
There was violence. There was violence. We were rowdy. We were loud. We were unapologetic in what we were doing. And we were charging through cities. Now, if we didn't do that, would you have heard of the English Defence League?
Right.
If we didn't, would anyone now be dealing with the rape epidemic of young British girls? Would they? Because in 2009, if you look, you can draw a graph. And from 2004 to 2009, the graph goes a straight line. This is arrests for Muslim rape gangs. 2009, 2010, 2011, it just goes through the roof. Yeah, because they had to. At that point, they couldn't hide it anymore. Now, Andrew Norfolk is the journalist who won the awards for exposing the grooming gangs. His words, not mine. He won all these awards. Now, he says in an interview, he knew it was happening as a journalist, but it was a far-right dream. Pakistani men, white girls. And he was too scared to report it. So he, as a coward, like the rest of them, knew little girls were being raped, but was too scared to report it because of the demographics of the rapists and the victims. And then he saw the emergence of the English Defence League. This is his words. And then he decided, like I've got some moral high ground, he decided we had to take it back from the far right. Now, what he means is, when he says far right, is Englishmen that weren't willing to allow this anymore. He had to take it back from the fathers, the brothers, the uncles and the relatives of the kids that were being raped, who decided we've had enough of this and we're on the street now. Yeah, and no, we're not going to back down. Our ethos, what was it? We had death, prison or glory. We will not submit. Now, Islam translates as some submission. So our main thing is we're not submitting and we're not backing down. Yeah, and that was needed at that time. But get to 2014, I no longer felt it was needed, in the sense of the arrests were happening, not to the scale they should be, but we'd done pretty well. No one had been killed. 6 Muslims got caught on the way to kill us. They got caught with suicide vests, guns, bombs, everything. They got 30 years in jail. But if they would have been successful in blowing up that English Defence League event, that could have started sectarian conflict. Now, we had a lot of contact with Northern Ireland and people in Northern Ireland, and there was the troubles in Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland. And I remember all the people there saying, you do not want to go down that path. Yeah, you don't want your country, and we didn't want that. So it gets 2014, and remember, this is before the rise of these. Yeah, if you wanted to speak to people, you got 5,000 on the street, and you told them what's happening. By 2014, I've decided I'm leaving the English Defence League anyway, and I made that decision because I was put in jail. 2014, and all the groups I'd fought, there was these groups, Northwest Infidels, absolute scumbags, yeah, proper Nazis, proper racist little mugs, and I'd had clashes with them for years. I go to jail. By the time I come out of jail, I watch the demonstrations I've missed when I'm in jail, and I see them all there. And I'm like, when you think of English Defence League, what do you think of? It's me. I'm the face of this shit. Yeah? I've got to walk around Luton with my head held high, which I can do, because I've stood up for what I believe in and what's right, morally right, and it has never been a racist group, and everyone knows me in Luton, all the blacks know me, everyone knows me, I've got a good friendship basis like that, so I could always do that. But when I saw that, I thought, am I the only person holding these lot back? I'm not being the face of that. So I made the decision to leave, but then I also made the decision to leave, but not to try and find a solution to the problem, but not give up what we were doing. And I realised that what I need the public to see is what I've seen. I need them to understand what Luton's like. And how can I do that? And it was journalism.
That's when you became a journalist.
That's when I became a journalist.
What was that transition like? Because now you're a proper journalist. Like I've seen your documentaries, like it's hard work, isn't it?
Well, Ezra Levant, do you know Ezra Levant? So Ezra run a media company. It's the first alternative media network, and it's in Canada, called Rebel Media. So I come out of jail in 2015, I've left the English Defence League, and I go back to work, yeah? And I haven't got time. Do you know what it was? I was a great leader to the English Defence League, because in the first 6 months, my door went off, I was raided 3 times, I was put on conditions, they limited my money, froze my assets for 4 years, yeah? Done all these investigations trying to shut us down. They targeted us because the grooming scandal we were talking about, they've all got dirty hands. And when I say that, Rotherham, say for example the Rotherham scandal, the police officer in charge of Rotherham at the time of the height of the rape scandal, where is he now? He's the head of counter-terrorism. Yeah? I'm on a terrorist charge right now. Yeah? The same people that are worried about what's going to come out, yeah, they've not been demoted. They've all been promoted.
Okay.
Through the Labour Party and the police forces, they're all sitting in the highest ranking positions of power right now. That's why Labour can't allow this big investigation. They cannot allow it. Why not? Because all their politicians are part of it. Yeah, they're all the people in councils or in positions of power. They've just gone up and up and up. None of them lost their jobs. They're all rewarded for covering up. Yeah, police force. For example, in Manchester, there was a girl called Victoria. Was it Victoria? A girl called Victoria died of a heroin overdose. Police launched. This was before the grooming scandal was public. Police launched an investigation, identified 100 rapists, arrested them all, prosecuted them. Yeah, just as the trial was about to start, CPS collapsed the whole case, just deleted it. Yeah, the police officer who was in charge of that and collapsed it then won an award by our royal family, highest award 6 months later. He was rewarded. They've all been rewarded. Where are they sitting now? They've rose up, yeah? But as they tried to crush me at the start of the English Defence League with the dawn raids, with the police raids, all these different things, I said, that doesn't work with me. Like, trying to shut me up just made me want to, and it made me the most dedicated, as I said about things taking over, it took over my life. I become a great leader to the English Defence League, but probably not a great dad. Yeah, certainly not a great husband. Okay, I certainly. So it
took. But you found your purpose.
Yeah, I found my purpose, and it found my purpose, and it become more than that. I'm a very deep thinker, and I'm trying to have this conversation with my ex-wife and her family when she was getting threats to be killed and police warnings that her life was in danger. And I've got her dad sat there saying, "What the hell are you doing?" Yeah, and I'm just like, am I wrong? I'm not wrong. I know I'm not wrong. But this needs to be confronted. But trying to say that and explain that I look deeply and think there's 1,000 years of Christian English history here. It's gone in 60 years. In 60 years, we've let this country be taken over by a medieval, barbaric mindset in towns and cities, and we've done it because we're too scared to be called a racist or something. Fuck off. Really? When you think about previous generations who were 14 and 15, who pretended they were old enough, They lied about their age to run into a beach with a life expectancy of a minute. And they done that to make sure they could safeguard a safe and prosperous Britain for the next generation. And we're worried about losing our job. So I sat there and thought about it. I thought, no, not a chance. Like at that time. And I think that we've bred a generation of cowards who care about ourselves rather than care about the wider community. And I'm trying to say that to my ex-missus. It's just like, yeah, I've got 3 kids, but this ain't about our kids, Jen. This is about a generation of kids. This is what's happening and it's real. But the difference is, now the public know it's real, but we knew it's real. People in Luton and towns like that, we've known it's real for so long. So as I said, I decided to leave the English Defence League, and Ezra said, I'd done a couple of interviews with Ezra, and he said, will you make a video? And he sent me a camera, and he sent me all the stuff. I'm useless. I don't do computers, I've never had. So he sent me all this stuff, and I never used it, and he kept ringing me. I said, and he kept hassling me that much. I said, I'm working, Ezra. Yeah? And I made one video, and it was about Sweden, I think, and it was me talking about what's happening in Sweden. And I've managed to, when I read things, they stay in my head, so I could just talk about them. And I made a video, and it blew. It went really well. And then he rang me, he said, what are you earning doing your building? I said, why? He said, I want you to make videos full time. And I said, okay. I said, so then, but my wife, I'd come out of prison and promised her. Yeah, I'd come
How
out.
many times you been in prison, Tommy?
About 6.
6.
All for work. All for journalism. Like that, people talk about my criminal record. I've never been tried by a jury. I've never been convicted by a jury. It's always the judges. Never get a jury. So then I made the videos, and then Ezra, I become a journalist, started making videos, found my niche, and then I not just found my niche, but I get a buzz. If you go watch my Oxford Union speech, yeah, I walked into Oxford University, and it was the first opportunity. I'd led the English Defence League for 5 years, and every time I'd been on TV, I just got shouted down. And they'd always pick the behaviour of the English Defence League, yeah, which was pretty indefendable at times. Yeah? They'd always pick that, but I'd be thinking, no, we've got a great argument here. Like, you need to listen, yeah, but no one would listen. So it was having an adverse. It wasn't getting what we needed really to win the hearts and minds of the public. I walked into Oxford University and they hated me. If you ever go speak there, anyone who goes to the debating chamber of Oxford University, you get taken for a 3-course meal. I didn't. So I got invited, but not invited, really. And when I walked in, no one would shake my hand, and everyone was pretty rude, and they were booing me. And I got up to talk, and he gave me, they said I could have 45 minutes, but my presentation was 1 hour and 14 minutes. So I said to him, he goes, no, you've got 45 minutes. And I stood up and started talking. It was my first chance in 5 years to tell people my story of Luton. And I kept asking the crowd, this isn't where you grew up, but think about what you would have done if it was. That's what I kept asking them. What would you have done if this... So, for example, when September 11th happened, at my local shops, they had posters celebrating it everywhere. Magnificent 19. And I showed them on my presentation.
Really?
I said, these are my shops. They weren't your shops. But when I went to the shop, this is what I saw. When at our local college, they all celebrated. They're all jumping around partying when the planes hit. The Muslims were. So I said, not your college, but my college. This is what I saw. When this happened, I showed Stacey Dooley when she walked through Luton. Do you know Stacey Dooley? No. She won like Dancing on Ice. She's become pretty famous. I grew up with her. But I showed videos of her when Muslims were attacking her. So I show all these different, there were 68 attacks against non-Muslim homes. So I'm trying to show the people to say, like, you may not like me, yeah, from what you've heard of me, but I was created in Luton because of the problems in Luton. And I just want you to understand. And I remember the bloke, they let me do the presentation, and I went from being hated at the start to getting a standing ovation from Oxford University, and then all of them coming up saying, I never knew this. I said, no, because they don't. And then I had Edinburgh University, York University, they cancelled everyone after that. Everyone was cancelled because they must have thought, shit, people are going to listen to him.
What year was this, Oxford?
2015.
15, okay.
And then but then at that point I'd become a journalist, and I'd become the most watched journalist in Europe. And I exploded on the scene. And I exploded because I was covering stories that no one else would. I was going into mosques and looking at the history of the mosques and the groups and the terrorists, finding them, tracking them down, talking about the rape gangs, which no one wanted to.
Why? Why wasn't Channel 4 doing this? Why wasn't the BBC doing this?
Why? Well, they've all controlled media. Let me tell you how they control media, because this is insane, yeah? Stephen Bird, Google him. Stephen, if you're watching this, when they unmasked me as leader of the English Defence League, 2010, probably, 11, a journalist called Stephen Bird knocked on my mum's door. And my mum rang me and said, journalists here. They're looking for Tommy Robinson. So I was like, right, game's up. Up until this point, no one knew who I was. So I was still living a bit of a normal life. The police knew who I was, but it weren't out there mainstream. Now, I was shitting myself, if I'm honest, because I thought, now it's on top. Now, if you search my name, it brings you back to my mum's address online. Mum's going to be targeted, house is going to be targeted. So I was worried. So I met this journalist up a pub in Farleigh in Luton, and he was fair. And when he said, when he sat down, he said, Stephen, your life changes tomorrow. I said, why? He said, we're your front page of the Times newspaper. Everyone's going to know who you are tomorrow. But I kept in contact with him, and I kept speaking to him, and I trusted him. Yeah. So 2017 comes. I'm doing my journalism. I'm outside a Leeds court, and there's 30 Muslim men on trial for raping young kids. And as they walk in, I ask them how you feel about your verdict. Now this story went worldwide. The police come and arrest me outside the court. I'm sentenced within 2 hours. I went to work. My car was outside. Like, see you later, kids. See you later, Jenna. I'm going to work. Yeah. 2 hours later, I've got 13 months. I rang her my phone call from the prison. I rang my wife. I said, all right. I said, I'm in jail. She's like, what? I said, I've just got 13 months in prison. She's like, fuck off. I was like, have you had enough yet? Like, I was thinking, here we go. But so I got 13 months in jail. It blew up, world news. They tried to put reporting restrictions on it. I was sentenced. They said I breached a reporting restriction. It took 12 weeks to get to the Court of Appeal, where they realised everything they'd done was unlawful and illegal, and I was released. Now, when I was released from prison, the government had funded on social media questions about your view on Tommy Robinson. Now, when I was in jail, 565,000 people signed a petition to have me released. 30,000 people marched on Parliament. Now, this would have worried the establishment. Yeah. So when I come out of jail, I'm told, someone comes to me and says, Panorama are doing an investigation into you. It's called Tommy Takedown. Yeah. They're coming for you. So I think Panorama are the best. For anyone who doesn't understand, Panorama are the flagship investigation company for the BBC. They do documentaries, and when they make a documentary, people listen. Yeah? They are experts in covert recording. I don't know, have you watched Panorama?
Yeah.
So they come and they're doing panorama on me. So I get a girl to covertly record the head of Panorama and get recordings of what they're planning on me. And I was shocked. I was shitting myself. Yeah. But I'd send her in, she wears a wire, she wears a camera, she goes out drinking, she's with the head of the BBC, and they're all sitting talking, and he's openly saying, we're going to stitch him. And they're telling people what to say about me in interviews. Say this, say this. Then they make up, they say they're going to make sexual allegations against me. Yeah? This is why I struggle with the Russell Brand story, the Andrew Tate. I've seen it. I would have been that.
Got it.
They were hammering me. I was going to be the new Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. But when the girl gets it all recorded, she covertly records it all. Then I contact Stephen Bird. I say, I need a meeting with you. I've got some gold. Yeah. He comes to see me. I play him all the recordings, and he's like, do you know how big this is? I said, yeah. This is the biggest flagship program making up fake news to destroy a political opponent. On behalf of who? The government? So this is massive. And he said, this is massive.
Is it ultimately on behalf of the government?
It's on behalf of the government.
Because the BBC is owned by the government.
BBC is owned by the government. They're ending me.
Paid for by the people.
They were ending me. Yeah. This would have been the end of me. No one would have ever listened to a word I said again, because I'd have been a sexual deviant, all the things that they would have told people about me. So I sit down with Stephen Bird, he listens to all the recordings, and then he says, right, this is massive. He goes away, arranges to meet me next day, comes back next day, I'm not allowed to run it. I said, and then by this time, what was he, Telegraph by this time? I said, you're not allowed to run it. He goes, I can't publish it. I said, free press. Like, what the fuck? And you know, so then I said, okay, you're not allowed to run it. So he weren't allowed to run it, but Panorama then rang me for an interview. They'd been looking for me. So I rang them up and said, right, meet you tomorrow. Didn't give them any time. I set up a screen behind me, and I met them in a location that I chose. I said, I have to meet you tomorrow. It's got to be tomorrow. I didn't want them time to think about it. So they've come to meet me. John Sweeney sat there, I'm sat here, all the producers.
Investment Club. Today I consider it the best investment that I've ever made. We get 4 projects presented a week by their associated CEOs. Personally, I'm completely blown away by the quality of these projects, and I know of nowhere else where I would be given this same opportunity. Each week that passes, I feel more appreciative of the fact that I'm a member of this group. The vibe was just tremendous. Everybody's on the same wavelength. We just clicked. Everybody listened to each other, enjoyed their company. It was just magical. Take action. Don't take my word for it. Due diligence you need to do. And I really hope that someday down the road I see you in the club. It far exceeded expectations, without question.
Are there. And then I just sat and asked him, would you ever tell anyone what to say about me in an interview? He said, no, press play. So on the screen behind me, it played him telling people what to say. Would you ever make up sexual allegations? No, press play. Are you a racist, John? Because that's what they call me, press play. I had him being racist, I had him being homophobic, I had him talking about shooting gay people. I had him banged to rights in covert recordings, yeah? The producers were putting their heads in their hand like that. So I get this documentary, and then I hire the biggest screen there is in the country, yeah? And I put it outside BBC's head office in Manchester, Salford. And 10,000 people turn up for me to show this film.
What's it called?
Panodrama.
Panodrama, that was your film?
That was my film.
Okay, that was your first film?
That was my first documentary.
Okay, how long?
That set me on my way, and that was what, 2018, was it?
And like 30-minute or feature film?
No, it was an hour, over an hour and 15.
Okay.
Hour and 15, and what it showed was that Panorama, the BBC that we pay for, were working with far left extremist organisations who were blackmailing my old employees in order to get them to say things on TV about me. And then they used that on the documentary, and then they used multiple people who were being blackmailed, yeah, and paid to say things, and then they tell people what to say, and they build a whole catalogue of things. So when you watch this documentary, you just think he's a scumbag. But you don't realise that all the people are being blackmailed and paid, and that all these abusive tactics are being used. And the BBC keep their hands dirty because they're not paying anyone. They use the extremist groups, Hope Not Hate, far left provocateurs. They use these groups to act where the police and the BBC can't. Yeah, so it's an operation. And you know what? I went back through the history of Panorama, and they'd done this to Conservative MPs 30 years ago with the same group. Hope Not Hate used to be called Searchlight. They got fined. They had to pay millions. So this is nothing new. It's nothing new. The difference is now social media. We've been lied to, we've been manipulated, we've been played, we've been deceived, we've been all of these things by the mainstream media. The media are a weapon of a totalitarian state. We don't live in a free state. Stop pretending we do. We don't have free speech. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a totalitarian state. The media, the judiciary, all these things are just weapons of that state. You've realised it when you've spoke up. You've realised it when you've been deplatformed. But my deplatforming, I produced Panodrama. It had 2 million views in 24 hours. I was deleted from everything at that point.
That was 2009. 18, they took you off Twitter. 19, they took you off Facebook.
When they took me off Facebook was this, because of Panodrama. Do you know what they done? They made it that if you mention Tommy Robinson, you get taken off Facebook. So overnight, they made it impossible for anyone to see the film, talk about the film. They erased it, and they erased me. And you know the difficulty. At that time, my journalism was flying.
Only because of social media, obviously.
Yeah.
But you could, at that point, publish across platforms.
I was publishing across platforms, and I was buzzing off of making people think and change their mind. And I got a real buzz when I read the comments saying, I didn't agree with this kid. I used to think he was this. And then they're watching films, and then I was deplatformed. I wasn't just deplatformed. They deleted me from social media, and then the Attorney General re-prosecuted me for the same offence I'd been in jail for a year before. I got put back in jail. And then I got worried, because then I thought, well, now I've got no social media. So now they're going to put me back in jail. They're going to let them get me. That's what I started thinking. I'm dead here now. Yeah. And and I've been through multiple situations like this, but that was the birth of my documentary making. So when they put me in jail in 2000 for this, I was reporting outside a court case. I made Panodrama. They locked me up again. Then I sat there and thought, right, all of this, I believe my entire targeting has been because of the dirty hands they have on the grooming gangs.
Okay.
They've stopped me from the very early days with fake arrests, dawn raids, bail conditions, limiting my speech, limiting my movements, giving me dates. I was due to talk at an event about grooming in 2009 in Bradford about Yorkshire rape gangs. They dawn raided me. They went in with machine guns to my mum's, to my kid's house. They nicked me. They bailed me to answer bail for a criminal damage. You know on the hotel room door there's £30 damage, like the metal bit of the door. That's what they arrested me for. Just made it up. Yeah, and I put a complaint in through the IPCC. They admitted it as well. Yeah, but what the purpose of it was They bailed me to the same date as demonstration. It was all to stop us talking about the grooming. It was Yorkshire police that travelled down to arrest me in Luton and dawn raid both the houses. It was Yorkshire police because they were in cover-up mode. Okay. No one knew about grooming. This was the lengths they were going to. You have to understand when an entire police force and establishment and government have got dirty hands, they'll go to any lengths to shut this up. When you see the lengths they went to. So this is what was happening. I was then put back in prison. As I sat in prison, I thought, you know what I'm going to do?
This is 2019?
2019.
And then you erased off social media.
Yeah.
How does that feel? How does that stop you?
It's pretty hard. It's pretty... Maybe it's for your ego as well. Maybe, maybe... Do you know what I was surrounded by? When I had the English Defence League, I was surrounded by people who told me my shit didn't stink. Yeah? To everyone around me, I was great. But at the same time, there were things I was doing and ways I was behaving that weren't great. I was in some dark places. Do you know when, in those early years, when the terrorists got arrested, I sort of felt like I was living with a terminal illness. I knew my time was coming. Okay. I was just a young lad, and you like to pretend you're not scared, but I was scared.
You thought you were going to get killed?
I thought I was going to get killed, which I was ready for the violence, or ready for the threats of violence. What I wasn't ready for was the state persecution. I had no idea of the lengths they would go to. Not just me. They arrested me. They arrested my ex-wife when she was 6 months pregnant. They put her on charges. They end up getting her on charges for tax and then making me plead guilty to charges I hadn't even done for mortgage fraud in order to drop the charge against her. Yeah? And what I was witnessing, I just thought, oh my God, they can do what they want. And I was never getting a jury. So each case I'm getting put before judges and I'm just getting banged back in jail, put in solitary confinement against all the laws of the prison. You're not allowed to be in solitary confinement for more than 14 days. I've just come out now after doing 7 months, sat in a room on my own. And all these things, I think, I can take the punch. I can take the threat of violence, but they're going for the mind and they've continually done it. And having no peace of mind or having the state and all the fears of it is constant weight. And I guess that's where they were targeting. And they were targeting everywhere. Tax investigations, money investigations, froze my assets, froze my banks, closed my banks. Impossible to live. They make it impossible. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't realise, I thought the country I live in, I realised very quickly it's a different country. I thought I lived in the birth of freedom and democracy.
Rule of law.
I thought
English law is celebrated around the world.
There is no English. There's a legal system, not a justice system. And when that legal system puts a target on you, it doesn't matter. They're coming. Okay. They're doing you. And they're doing you to set an example of you. And with me, they've wanted to set an example, to send a message to everyone else, but it's backfired. Because I'm a stubborn little shit. And it hasn't worked.
So walk me through the last 5 years. You were in jail in 19, deplatformed everywhere. You come out, still deplatformed.
Come out, still deplatformed, and done the most important work I've ever done.
Which is
done
what?
A 5-part series called The Rape of Britain.
Okay.
And what I thought is, do you know, say for example in Telford, so people who understand the scale of the rape scandal, yeah? Telford has a 1.7% Muslim population, which means there's not many there. Yeah? Luton's 50%, okay?
50?
50. Wow. Telford's 1.7.
Okay.
Now the police identified 200 men that had been raping in Telford. They identified 1,000 victims, 5 of them are dead. Yeah? This is how big the problem is. Right? Now, if you take Telford and you take the Muslim community, which is about 3,500, and you get rid of the women and you get rid of the under-16s and the kids, you've got about 1,000 men. So the police, I'm looking at it thinking, well, the police have identified 200. Now, they've put me in jail to stop the grooming scandal and to stop us talking about it. I'm going for it. Yeah? So I spent 12 to 18 months, when I come out of prison, I spent 12 to 18 months in the town of Telford. And I sat down and got to know survivors and their families. And I'd interview them for 3 hours, 4 hours, 3 times, 4 times. Yeah? And I built a database. And we'd done a police-style investigation. And I take the credit for it, because people see me, but behind me there was a team of volunteers. Yeah? And I remember when I went to Telford and I had all the local lads saying, you need to be careful up here, Tom. Yeah? They run this town. And I was sitting there thinking, 1.7%. How the hell ain't you lot smashing these lot, yeah, for what they're doing? And I think we were having a go in Luton, and we're 50%. Yeah, we were having a proper go with them for years. We didn't take their shit. They knew that there was a consequence. But I'm looking in 1.7, and they control the whole town. Everyone's shit scared of them. They're like a mafia. I think, how have you lot not stood up to these men? What's happened to us? What has happened to the communities? Where's the English men? And that's all this going on. So I sit down and interview all these girls. And I built this database. When the men were named by 3 girls that don't know each other, that was my, I'm coming, yeah? And what the purpose of this was for. In Telford, the police identified 200, but they only prosecuted 11. Yeah? As I started doing this investigation, I built a wall of the men. And some were in the CPS, some were in the police, some were Labour councillors. This is the level of that's what it was like. No wonder they got it on lock. Yeah? Everywhere you turn, they're all interlinked. And the Benally gang was what this gang were called in Telford, the Benallys. Now, my purpose was, I meet these girls and these survivors, and they might have been raped 15 years ago. They're still suicidal. They're still drinking. They're still struggling. They're still looking over their shoulder. They still haven't got a minute's peace. And I was looking at the gangs. They're all driving fucking Porsches. They've all got successful businesses. They don't give a shit. So the purpose of the film was to make them give a shit. Yeah?
And yeah, I've seen your interviews. I mean, I've watched the pieces.
People are going to see who you are, lads.
They're in the car and you're interviewing them through the window,
Yeah.
and you're saying 3 different girls, all independently named you. What do you have to say for it?
Well, you've got to say for yourself. And the purpose, for my purpose, just to be honest, was to expose it. I want the neighbours to know who he is.
Right.
When he walks down the street, yeah, people are going to look at you now, Charlie. His name was Charlie. People are now going to look at you. People know what you've done. Yeah, and I was sure of it because 3 girls that don't know each other have said it. And the frustrating thing was we uncovered police corruption. Police were working with the gangs. In fact, the main police officer, Inspector Jim Bayliss, who I find in the documentary and question him, the case is collapsed under his leadership. Yeah. Then we find out he's working with the gangs. He's spotted with the gangs. Yeah, we put trackers on their cars, including the police officers' cars. Yeah,
you go above and beyond.
Yeah, we were going.
You secretly record people. Yeah. You track them.
But we knew it. I knew. You see that gang, and I had some gangsters ring me up. So there's another gangster in that town, one of the main Pakistani gangsters, and he rang me up. He goes, "You're Tommy, man. What the fuck?" He goes, "Bruv, I ain't a groomer." I said, "I know you're not." I said, "I know everything about every one of you." Yeah. I said, "I know they're your mates, mate, but I know there's not one single allegation against you." And he must have been so happy. He goes, "You're not going to," I'm not getting named then, Tommy. No one's naming me. I said, "Mate, I've spoke to everyone. I know who the rapists are and I know who they're not." But what I wanted to do, so I put all the faces of the rapists, yeah, because we can only cover a certain amount in the work we're doing, but I wanted them all to think, shit, yeah. And they all started selling their businesses. And I mean, they must have chartered their own flights to Pakistan, yeah. Literally, they all left. They all left, but they knew, and for me, I thought, yeah, well, good. But then I didn't think about because they blew my car up. They went to my mum's. And then I started thinking, maybe this is why no journalist takes them on. Because literally they come. And then I had them, so my mum said the neighbour knocked and said a car was so the neighbour videoed a car of Muslims outside my mum's house and they were videoing her house. So I took the registration plate, paid a private investigator, got the address of the Muslim lad, which was Dudley, and then I looked him up on social media, and we found the best private investigators, so we found everything, yeah? We were on them. Like, literally, we knew where they were, we knew how they're laundering their money. How ain't the police doing them, yeah? But we got so intact on this gang, and then they're ringing me up, threatening my kids, threatening the schools, saying they're going to rape them, all these things. Police don't do anything. Then they're smashing up and blowing up the victims' houses. Like, it went mad. And I thought, for years I've always talked about Islam, but I've never made it personal. With this gang, I made it personal. But when they went to my mum's house, again, there's only one language I understand. So they went to my mum's house. And then within the 2 days, within 48 hours, I was at his front door. And I just knocked at his front door. And his nephew answered. And I said, "Where's him, man?" And he goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Ring him now and tell him I'm here." "What's he gone to my mum's house for?" And I looked him up on social media and he's friends with all the rapists. So I know what it's about. I said, "Tell him," and then he started trying to say that he'd sold the car. I said, man, I said, "Listen, lads, I know where your mum are. I know where your family are." I said, I could have come here with 100 men. I said, "But you're not going to be terrorising my family. It's just not going to happen, not without repercussions." But that's the only way you have to live with them. And at the same time then, all the pressure that comes with it. And it does work. It does work. So that took us on the Grooming gang scandal. We made a 5-part series. If you want to watch these films, you can watch them at trfilms.co.uk. Do you know how frustrating it is when you're making the most important stories, giving a voice to the most forgotten people, and if you're censored? And you're censored. When I sat in jail this most recently about a film I made, Elon Musk shared, Nicole was the first story we told, a wonderful young girl, beautiful young girl who was impregnated at 13 when she was raped, 100% DNA match for the rapist. He didn't get prosecuted. Her life was destroyed by these gangs. Elon Musk shared her film. It was I was sat in jail, I was like, mate, the world's talking about this issue. It's happening. It's worked. All that hard work of not me. Do you know how many survivors? So people get to hear my story. Do you know Sammy Woodhouse? I look at these survivors that that have told the stories, stood in the fire's way. Even Raj Miah, do you know him?
No.
Get him on. Yeah,
Okay.
Muslim lad in Oldham. Mate, I know what it's like to talk out against these gangs. He's took them all on. He's still living in Oldham. I'd be dead if I was still living around them. He's still in the middle of it. Taking them on, showing who they are, exposing them. So I think there's so many people who have not had any, not just recognition, but they've been attacked. Like the amount of people or whistleblowers that might have tried to be whistleblowers that just got shut down by the police, persecuted by the authorities, all of them were part of the cover-up. So where we are now, we're at a very different place now. And again, I'm a different man. I'm 42 years old, father of 3, 25 when I started the EDL. I've learned a lot, probably matured a lot.
What have you learned?
Well, I've learned that we live in a totally corrupt society. We live in a total corrupt society. But what I've learned is that they've tried to crush every voice that's come forward, and our movement's voice is now louder than ever. And that if you can resist it, like I'm meant to be the most hated man in Britain. That's what they've tried to make me. All I get is love now.
From the moms now, you said.
From the mums, yeah. I used to get punched in the even from Muslim lads.
They give you love?
Mate, I'll show you this. This is just this morning on the train. They give me lots of them, because remember, I'm not saying every Muslim's a rapist at all, far from it. Yeah? Imagine how frustrated you'd be if you was a Muslim lad and all this is going on in your community's name.
Right.
So this is me, this is an 11-minute conversation, I record everything, yeah?
So go share with the friend then.
He's a Pakistani lad on the train.
And he just starts talking to you?
All of them do now. And he's like, Tommy, man. And then when I'm talking to him, he's like, yeah, fair. And they think you're not as bad as... I said, no, I'm not. But what I explained to him is, do you love your sister? He said, yeah. I said, got lots of nieces you love? He said, yeah. I said, what if white men were taking them and raping them? What would you do? He's like, I said, well, that's what's happening to our kids, mate. Yeah? And then when we try and talk about it, what, we're racist, are we? I said, I don't care what you call us. We don't care anymore, bruv. And then he was actually really understanding. He was a nice lad. Good job. I said, yeah, but you're not... And then he said, yeah, but I'm a Pakistani. I said, yeah. I said, let me make the point to you, bruv. You're a Pakistani. 3% of the country is Pakistani. 33% of child defects at birth are Pakistani. That's because you decide to marry your cousins because your prophet married his cousin. Now, 76% of Pakistani Muslims in Bradford marry their cousins. Yeah, that, when you make up 2%, 3% of the country may be able to afford for these problems. Yeah, your demographic is exploding. We can't continue with this. These problems need to be addressed. 48% of 16 to 60-year-old Muslims don't work. Now, at a small community, that might work. When you become 20%, it doesn't. The state's going to collapse. 40,000 British Muslims on a terror watch list. What do you want to do about them? I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to get rid of them. Yeah? 3,000 Muslims are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at a cost of £9 billion a year. And half of them have got dual nationality. Well, they've got to go, mate. They've got to go. 22% of British Muslims want Sharia law in this country. That's 1 million Muslims that need to leave. I'm not going to mix my words with you. You seem like a nice guy. Yeah? But I had this whole conversation with him. What do you want me, as a non-Muslim, as an Englishman, what do you want me to think about this? I'll tell you what I'm going to think. They've got to go. And I'm not going to apologise for that. Yeah? This mindset and this barbaric alien culture does not belong here, mate. Yeah? You can come here, have a great life. I'm not saying every Muslim needs to leave. What I'm saying is, at some point, this country's going to have to look around and decide what future it wants. Do you want to become an Islamic country? Or do you want to stick to your Christian values? We need to refine who we are. We need to refine and rediscover ourselves. And as I'd say, as British men, the problem that the government and the establishment now have is they manage to weaken us, they manage to dumb us down, and they manage to make us in fear. But it's part of British spirit to fight. And people are waking up. And I don't think they're ready for it. And I don't think they understand. And I've watched for years and said, you see all these people have been wronged. And all these people who think like us, but they've been too scared to say it. When that bubble bursts, they're not going to be saying it. They're going to be screaming it.
Right.
Yeah? And the government should have listened 12 months ago after Southport riots. They should have listened. They should have said to the country, we get it. Your women are scared. Women are being raped across the country. We're going to help you. Yeah, we're going to address this problem. We're going to stop and close the borders. We're going to stop importing these rapists. But they didn't. They called everyone racist and told them to shut up or they send them to jail. That's not going to work. Okay? We're at the same position now. Did it work? Are we scared? We're going to lock you up in jail. We don't care. It doesn't matter, because the risk to the country and the risk to our children, the risk to our women, far outweighs the fear of us. I'm worried about going to jail, not as worried as I am about what Britain looks like in 20 years' time. I'll sit in jail. My kids need to grow up in a safe and prosperous country that has a Christian culture and identity, that's not dominated by Islam, and that doesn't continue its open border policy to men with alien cultures. Like Afghanis, we just bought 100,000. 99% of Afghanis in Afghanistan want Sharia law. They don't leave that view on the border. Yeah? Oh, they don't come in but just become liberal and westernised. It's a problem. So all these, and people don't want to hear this conversation, unfortunately, or they haven't. Now they do, because they can see the problem. And it's time for strong leadership and at least strong words, and someone's got, and I've always said, you see, when people, when they look, when the average British man realises the level they have fucked this country to, when they realise they've took the safety of your women, your daughter is not safe anymore, walking down the street in her own town, even in villages like in Essex now, what's going on, they're not safe. When the British man realises that and looks at that government and realises you absolutely destroyed our country. You allowed this to happen. You actually purposely did this. There's going to be a level of rage that they are not ready for.
Are things changing? You got a national inquiry about the rape gangs, or do you? You said they're not going to follow through that, but they've acknowledged it for the first time ever.
So the national inquiry, yeah? Oldham, where this come out of, Raj Miah needs a lot. You should sit down with Raj Miah, get him on.
Okay.
Raj Miah was fighting in Oldham, parents were fighting in Oldham to get an inquiry. Oldham, 33% Muslim population, Labour council. 5 times they voted down in the council against any inquiry. So we've had an inquiry in Telford, it wasn't a national one with statutory power, it was a solicitor-led one. Now Telford has one.
What the London Real Investment Club actually does for you, it gives you the keys to open that door to the inside deals. In the last 3 weeks, I've participated in 3 incredible deals: a layer 2 Bitcoin protocol, an incredible AI protocol. The deal flow is beyond what I expected. I don't think I've ever seen a model like this that just gives average folks the opportunity to be behind the deals, and that's exactly what we've done. Not only that, you get to hang out with Brian Rose every week, and for me, that was huge because I look at Brian as somebody who's not only an expert in the space, and I think is on the leading edge, but just the leading edge of thought with London Real and the work he's doing there. To anyone who's taking a serious look at this, I know it's a big decision. It was a big decision for me and my family, and it is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I wish you all the best and hope you come join us. .7% Muslim population. That's why we got an inquiry. Yeah, Rotherham has 3.7% Muslim population. Now, if we got 1,400 victims in Rotherham and 1,000 in Telford, there's no Muslims in those towns. You're never going to get the figures in Oldham, where it's 33% Muslim population. You're never going to get the figures in Bradford. They're going to be covering up. Yeah. So in Oldham, they're fighting for this inquiry, and the Labour Council keep voting it down. And literally, there's videos. I'm going to use this in my next documentary. I'm making a documentary about it. The families are being dragged out of the council building, screaming and crying, because they want this inquiry. They want to investigate what's happened, and they just shut it down. So then what happens is, at the local elections, independents stand and say, we will give an inquiry. So then they get in and they say, right, we're having an inquiry. This is what happened when I was in jail. So then the local council go to the Labour government and say, we want an inquiry. What does Jess Phillips do? She fucking shuts it down again. Labour, again, shut it down. This is what blew the whole situation up with Elon Musk, because they shut down the inquiry again. And then what they say is, we'll have these little inquiries. Now, you see the little inquiries, which is what they've done in Telford. If they don't give statutory power, it means that there's no power to summons under oath, on oath, for police officers and council officers and social services. So if they had statutory power, they get the police officer, what did you know? Yeah. If they lie, they're getting 2 years. Right? So that's the only way to get the truth. Now, in Telford, what they did was they tried to get an inquiry, and the council, including the Labour MP, wrote to Amber Rudd, who was Conservative Home Secretary, and blocked it. I've got the letter. I've got their signatures on the letter. Yeah? They wrote and blocked it. So then they blocked it. So then they had a solicitor-led inquiry, which has no power. So even though we had an inquiry in Telford, which was devastating, we didn't actually get the real information, because the real people are protected because there's no statutory power. So what Labour are cleverly trying to do is give 4 little inquiries that have no power.
So we don't understand the dirt in the police force. We don't understand social services. We can't get the truth. Right? That's what they're still trying to do. So they're still trying to make it look like there's an inquiry. But if they allow an inquiry, if they do, say for example in Rochdale, when there was a rape gang scandal and there was 100 victims, well, Councillor Hussain for the Labour Party went to court and gave a character reference for the rapists. He went to court as a local Labour representative and said, no, this rapist is a lovely bloke, I know him. Yeah? So the girl that was raped in his community, he's her representative, and he went to court to defend the rapist. The ex-Labour mayor of Bolton went to court to defend the rapist. Now, what happened to Councillor Hussain after he gave a statement for rapists of kids? He didn't lose his job. He got accelerated through the Labour Party. In Oldham, what happened to the man whose job it was to protect kids for the Labour Party? He's in jail as one of the rapists. In Rotherham, Councillor Jaglia, who was the main uncle of the main rapist for the Rotherham scandal, who got the biggest sentence out of any in the country, he was active with the gangs. So if we have a real inquiry that has statutory power, what we're going to find out is that it was a Labour rape gangs. They weren't just Muslim rape gangs. They were Labour's Muslim rape gangs in every town and city. Labour are in the middle of it. They're in bed with it. When they weren't covering up, they were involved in it, and none of them cared. So that's why there's been the mass cover-up, because of how dirty all their hands are. So, and for me...
So would a Conservative government be...
No.
They don't want to do this either?
No, Conservative government were in power for 14 years. They didn't want to do it either. None of them want to do it. They were all part of it. All of them were part of it.
Right.
All of them were part of the cover-up. Every police force, every single political party were all part of it.
Happened in London too, do you think?
Well, this is the thing. We've got 55 cities where it's happened. They say, yeah? Luton's not in that city. Well, I know about 50 victims. Right? My cousin was one of them. So we've had 55 cities where there's been arrests. In every single community where there's a Muslim community, these gangs are active. Now, Muslims make up 5% of the UK population, 84% of the convictions for this gang level grooming. Yeah? 30% of the men convicted are called Mohammed. Why? You're not allowed to ask that question, or you're an Islamophobe, or you get shut down, you get attacked. And why? Why are the Sikhs not doing it? How come there's no Sikh gangs doing this? How come they're all Muslim? How come there's no Hindu gangs? How come the Sikhs are victims, the Hindus are victims, the Christians are victims, we're all victims of we're literally got groups that have been imported into our nation that are raping their way through every town and city. And it's not like, and the people are now seeing this, whereas they hid it. Now everyone can see it. You can see it in the hotels, the sexual assaults and the rapes coming out of the migrants in the hotels. They're being imported in, they're covering it up. The one in Portsmouth recently, the one in Epping. Like literally, in fact, again, I challenge anyone to do this. You can do this now. Go put in refugee rape Leicester. It'll bring up case after case. Refugee rape Manchester. It'll bring up refugees in Manchester being convicted of rape. Refugee rape Leeds. So what is the government's job? First and foremost, to protect the British people. I don't care about some Somali, if I'm honest, or some Afghani on a boat. I care about the British women and their safety, our women, and our families who have sacrificed for this nation. And we've got politicians that care more about Gaza. They talk more about Gaza. Do you know, it's four times as many British MPs wrote letters to block me getting entry to America than they've ever mentioned grooming. So, but we are, whilst I'll be so negative and everything is negative, we are in a position now where the public are awake. There is a revolution brewing in Great Britain.
You feel it?
I can feel it and see it.
In the last couple of years, since you went to prison this last time?
The last 24 months has really accelerated. There's a Christian revival coming. Something is happening.
In the United States as well. How much of this is driven by the Trump revival? Trump just sat down with Starmer in Scotland, and he's saying your borders are a mess. Trump shut the borders down to zero
people.
Zero.
But what that shows, what does that show, Brian? It shows that they can stop it. There's no will to stop it. They don't want to stop it.
With leadership and a vision,
but
and someone who doesn't care.
And courage.
Yeah, courage.
Which none of them have. They'll find courage, because they're all cowards, yeah? They'll ride the wave when it comes, because it's coming. And there ain't going to be no stopping it. There is going to be no stopping it. What's happening now, the swing from left to right, they can't stop. No one can stop it. I think you lock us up in jail. You think that's going to stop it? All you've done is accelerate it. You've awoken more people than I could ever dream of by my last prison sentence.
Really?
And my last prison sentence was for making a film. I'm a journalist. Yeah, I made a film. I'm unapologetic.
You made the film Silenced. You showed it in Trafalgar Square. You were told not to, and they put you in jail.
I'm still gagged now. I've done enough. I'm still gagged now where if I went into details about this, I'll be straight back in jail for 2 years. freedom of speech. I'm a journalist. I made a film. And in my statement to the judge when I made the film, when I went to court, I said, look, if this puts me on the wrong side of the law, because people say, well, he broke the law. I'm a journalist. I believe in free speech. I believe the British public should have the truth. Now, if they're using NDAs, which I proved in my documentary, they were paying people not to tell the truth. How many other instances are you being lied to about? How many other stories are you being lied to about? How many other stories the media who all knew the truth in the situation I spoke about, but none of them reported it? Now, I believe that citizen journalists are the answer to our problem. Shows like yours, Brian, are the answer, which is why you were censored, deplatformed, and totally eradicated during the height of their biggest lie and scandal of COVID. Yeah, there's reasons why people like us have come under attack. The problem for them was, it used to be just David Icke, Alex Jones, you, me. Now there's an army. You can't stop it. The citizen journalists are out of control, lads, yeah? Everyone's picking one of these up. It's the most encouraging sight I've ever seen. I think, who goes to BBC for their news anymore? You go to X, you follow a citizen journalist, you follow a live stream. They can't stop it. Well, they're trying to stop it with the Internet Harms Bill now, that they just brought in, trying to limit what you can see.
Yeah.
They want to
what do you make of that? The online protection bill and all this other nonsense?
16-year-olds are old enough to vote, but that's what they're saying, and make decisions, but then they're hiding from 16-year-olds any of the videos and content which would allow them to make their mind up to actually make a correct vote. So I think it's total censorship, it's total control. Again, if you look at when Trump got elected in 2016, they lost control. Yeah? When I say they, the establishment, it started with Modi in India before Trump. Modi was elected as a nationalist leader, the media hated him, the establishment hated him, he won. Yeah? Trump gets elected, then they realise, shit, okay, we need to get back power. So they take over big tech. They take over Facebook, they take over Meta, they take over all of them, they take over YouTube. They start picking people off who are influencing and showing the truth. They get rid of them all. Fast forward now, Elon Musk buys X. I think Elon Musk will be remembered as not for sending things up in space, but for saving freedom of speech. There's a battle going on. Imagine now we didn't have Donald Trump in America. Imagine we didn't. Imagine what the censorship levels would be right now. Now, Britain can't, and the European Union is struggling. They want to bring in total authoritarian rule and total censorship. But now they've got a White House who are telling them, you must give free speech.
Yeah, and stop prosecuting our companies.
Stop prosecuting our companies.
And he's leading by example, breaking down all the woke stuff and the DEI. By the way, Trump reversed that in 60 days.
Overnight.
And all the corporations dropped it, and the people dropped it. It's that turning point, like you said, right when it's ready to go, you realize, wait a second, we've all thought this was bullshit for so long, but nobody was brave enough to say it. And you think that's happening now in Britain?
It's happening.
You think the British man is finally waking up and is willing to take some responsibility?
Oh yeah, there's an uprising coming that they have no idea is coming. I just think you have no idea.
Because I worry about Europe, Tommy, because I don't see a Trump in the UK and I don't see a Trump in Europe, and I see these decaying socialist economies going down the tubes. Now, Britain's an exception because it's not grouped in with Europe. But you don't think we need the leader? You think it's happening anyways?
I believe that in
Spain, without Trump, this wouldn't have happened.
None of it's happening. There's going to be a ripple effect coming out. No, it's already happening. I walked out of jail this time, recently, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, whatever, and my YouTube channel's back.
That's wild.
I was banned. Do you know what? My interview with Jordan Peterson, my interview with lots of people was limited in being shared. All of a sudden when I come out, all the limitations are taken off. Now where's that come from? That's come from Trump. It's come from the White House.
Yeah.
It's come from free speech. Now it's not under total control because many of us are still censored. I'm still censored on Facebook and these social medias. But that shift, that ripple's coming. Now if you look, who's the future leaders of Europe? Yeah? Who do we look to? You don't look to Angela Merkel and these sorts of people anymore, or Macron, or any like that. I'd look to Eastern Europe. I'd look to Viktor Orban. We're all going to look to Poland. We're going to look to these countries. Santiago, the leader of Vox will end up winning the election in Spain. All the fastest growing political movements in Europe, Geert Wilders won the election in Holland. When we started our activism, when I started in 2009, the Swedish Democrats won 1% of the vote. They're now on 23. What's the Swedish Democrats' policy? Islam's got to stop. We stop Islamic immigration. We need we need remigration. What's Germany? The AfD just got 21% of the vote. Remigration was their slogan. When we say remigration, they let in 1 million Syrians. Well, what they're saying is, time to go. You're not integrating, you're not assimilating. And to be honest, any of the refugees in the UK have come through 16 safe nations. Yeah? We're not willing to sacrifice our kids' future anymore. This is our country, not yours. Okay? It's not, if you're a Somalian, it's not your country, I'm sorry. Yeah? It's not. Your family have sacrificed nothing for this country. Ours have. It's our country. We got to a position where we were too scared to even say it's our country. London's our capital, right? It's not Pakistan. It's not Afghanistan. It's Britain, it's England. How have we even got to a point where we're scared to say that? We want what's right for us. And there's a Christian revival coming. I watched it and what I see now, I've come on a total shift as well. I had an experience in jail with a pastor there where I started searching myself. But what I saw is that Islam's filled a void and Christianity's been under attack. The family's been under attack. And when you have no belief, it's easy for something to fill it. Whether it be communism, Marxism, LGBTQ plus agendas, all these things. When you have no value, and I laughed, and when I look at Russia and the West, I think, well, what is Western values? What, a rainbow flag? Yeah? You need a strong sense of identity, and Islam gives this. Yeah. So when I watched our demonstration in June, the first one, United Kingdom, and when I say I've learned a lot with the English Defence League, at our demonstrations now, there's no face coverings, there's no alcohol. Yeah? You come for a celebration of identity, okay? We come for a family day out, and and I know that you see what the government would love is people turn up with masks on. They instigated, you saw in Epping recently where they bust in Antifa wearing masks to provoke reactions of violence, and then the media can act as a weapon to portray the innocent families in Epping who are scared about the migrants, to portray them as bad, violent criminals, violent thugs or far right. That's how they win. So in our last demonstrations, to prevent January 6th, look at January 6th, they infiltrated, it was government-led, FBI, it's all proven, yeah? Well, that's what they do. We know that's what they do. In the riots after Southport last year, go watch the riots in Sunderland when they set fire to the police station. It's 10 people wearing all black, you can't even see their skin. It's the police, I'm telling you. It's government groups. Google Special Demonstration Squad. There's a squad that our government had that infiltrate peaceful protests in order to provoke riots. And then they provoke the riots in order to demonise and slander and make sure that no one listens to you. So they've done it with the English Defence League. I watched it for years. I watched it. I could see it. Yeah. So what we do now is, if you
have an event coming up September 13th in London.
It's going to be the biggest event this country's seen.
And you said, bring your family, bring your kids,
bring your smiles.
I was like, whoa, bring your smiles.
Bring your smiles.
It's a celebration.
We've had 3, yeah. And the first one, do you know what we've done? So if you wear a mask, we're going to take that off you. Yeah. You are not turning up to our event covering your face. We're proud of what we're standing for. Yeah, this is changing times. We're not ashamed. And if you're worried about your job and you feel the need to cover your face, don't come, because you're going to do our cause a disservice. You're going to do your country a disservice. So we have explained to people and really appealed to people. Do you see the anger they're feeling? It's justified. You see the men who charge through the streets, the young British men. I get it. I was one of them. Yeah. Someone needs to channel that anger, harness it, and direct it in the right way. So I remember when the riots were going on last summer, I made a video saying to lads, take the balaclavas off the kids. They're going to go to jail. But I was one of those kids. I understand why you're angry, yeah? But that's how they win. If we want to win the hearts and minds of this country, and we want to put the fear of God into those traitors in Parliament, then come and be happy, yeah? And show the biggest mobilisation of people and send a message to them that we control who we are. We control how we behave. And do you know what's happened in the last 12 months, or 18 months? We've built a fabulous relationship from having the worst relationship 18 months ago with the Metropolitan Police Force. I mean, like, patriots across this country hated the Metropolitan Police Force. And there was clashes every time. And what happened was they'd play us against each other. Because the average police officer does not hate us. And they are on the front line. We're pro-police. We support them. Yeah, their hands are tied behind their back. And you know, when I went recently, when I was detained for making that film, I was detained on October 25th. We had a massive demonstration on October 26th. I'm sat in the police station in Felixstowe, where I'm being held till court, so they blocked me going to the demonstration. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, pictures started coming under the police cell. And the police officers were printing off photos of people gathering for our event. At 11 a.m, the door opened, and it was the policewoman with a live stream of TikTok saying, look how many are there, Tommy. Look how many are there, yeah? And the police were like that. And then I've come out to make my phone call at 6 o'clock. 2 sergeants are there, said, you smashed it. No trouble, Tommy, no trouble. Because that's what so we were appealing to our people. If you see someone causing trouble, pull them. We'll police ourselves. And in the meetings with the police, I said, stay away from us. Lads, just stay away. If anyone steps out of line, we'll deal with them. No one's come to this event and getting aggressive because we're not going to let them. Yeah? And that shows an element of control, but it lets the public see that the image that's been portrayed of us isn't what you see when you come. So 30,000 people come to our first one, 100 to the next one, 200 to the next one. This is going to be the biggest thing London's seen. And do you know what? We've got Jordan Peterson speaking. We've got Katie Hopkins speaking. We've got Dominic Szweski, the Polish politician. We've got representatives coming from the AFD, Vlaams Belang, the leading Belgian party. We've got Morten Messerschmidt, leader of Danish People's Party. This was unthinkable 12 to 18 months ago. Something's happening, and also with Christianity, I think you're going to have 500,000 people to 1 million people chanting Christ is King. Something's happening. And what's happening is people are looking and trying to rediscover what built this country. What have we lost? I'll tell you what we've lost. We've lost our Christian identity. And I think the only solution to getting us out of this, and even if you're an atheist, you need to look at what built this country. You need to look at the values that it was built on and what made it great. What made people from around the world want to come here. It wasn't being an atheist nation. It was being a Christian nation with strong Christian values. And even if you don't believe in Jesus, look at the culture that it built, look at the communities it built, and understand that we need to refine that. Or we're in danger. Or you see, no one can sit here, if you speak to people, and say, anyone knows this. Any British person. Are we in a better position now than we were 10 years ago? No one can say this country's going in the right direction. No one.
Nobody.
Mass deportations was unthinkable. That phrase was unthinkable 24 months ago. Look how far the Overton window has shifted. Where we're going to be in 24 months. Where we need to be is strong, resilient. We need to be talking, which is why we're having a free speech festival. Because you see, if we all just spoke openly, if every single person, I've said it for years, if the public were aware of the danger and the future that's going to happen to Britain with the mass Islamic immigration, there'd be a revolution tomorrow. Okay? So we've gone through an education period where we've been trying to awaken people. And I just saw the latest figures that says 48% of the public now realise Islam is incompatible with British values. 48%, that's good. We're getting somewhere. People are listening. People understand the truth, the reality. Again, it's not saying that every Muslim is a problem. It's just saying that we need to, the more Islam, the less freedom.
What are my friends, or some of my friends in the Emirates watching this right now, who are Islamic and who have their country, and they're looking at Tommy and they're thinking, what am I supposed to think about this guy? What are they supposed to think of the statements that you make?
Well, you have your Islamic country, and you're happy for it to be an Islamic country, and you wouldn't want anyone coming there telling you how to live your life. Yeah? We have our Christian country, it's our country, and in fact, they have a very good handle on things in the United Arab Emirates. Understand, I think the UAE is a very poor example of an Islamic country because it's a country that's drowning in wealth. Let's look at Afghanistan and see what it's like there. Let's look at Iran and see what it's like there. What's the freedom like? What's it like for non-Muslims in those countries? What's it like for the non-Muslims in Nigeria? Yeah, where they're getting massacred by groups every day. In the Congo now, where they're getting massacred. What's it like? So I think, but the United Arab Emirates ban Muslim Brotherhood. They ban Hizb ut-Tahrir. They know how to deal with these groups. They are a very wealthy nation. They don't allow the immigration problems that we allow, and they actually try warning us. So I don't think that it's
They have warned. There's a famous speech
you'd see from the
where he said,
and even Saudi Arabia now, the new king of Saudi Arabia is trying to reform. I think that a lot of those nations understand, and in fact, if you look at the alliance, they stand with America, Israel on many issues now. Yeah, they understand the problems that come from literal Islam, and I'd say Qatar, the United Arab Emirates aren't spreading the Wahhabi Salafist sects as much as Qatar are. Qatar are a massive problem. Qatar and the funding that comes from Qatar is partly the problem why we face so many problems in Europe. They've destroyed France. All the money coming out of Qatar.
Is the ultimate enemy, or one of the biggest enemies, this political correctness, this wokeism, to where people censor themselves and feel like, I can't say the obvious of what these guys are doing in my community and what they're doing to the girls. I mean, and the way they've taken, emasculated the men and taken the family out of the society and taken the religion out of the society. I mean, is that all a factor as well?
I'd say the fear is real, and I don't blame the people for having that fear. Remember, I wore a mask, so I had that fear.
Okay.
I had properties and businesses that I didn't want to lose.
Yeah.
So I didn't willingly put my face up. Yeah. I was the same as that person. Yeah. Now what they've done is they've managed to get the whole of society financed up to the neck. Yeah. And living on the need for the job, and no one can lose the job.
Right.
So people have, first and foremost, they want to protect their family. So I don't blame them. I understand it. Yeah. I understand why they're scared, and they're rightfully scared because they have all these NGO organisations that make sure you do lose your job. Yeah, if you speak out. So they've managed to, they don't need to bring in laws against free speech, they just scare the hell out of you, and people know Do we live? Do you hear anyone saying anymore? It's a free country. No one says it anymore. They know it's not. We've come to we now know it's not. Yeah. We don't have free speech. You will lose your job. So I don't blame people. But the problem is, that is the mass problem. There's everyone just spoke openly, but they are now. Do you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, do you know how lonely it was?